Should I choose web development or DevOps? A question I've received from a lot of students. Apart from that, there are also questions like what kind of skills do I need to get a high paying remote job? Or would interviewers even consider my application? Since, most of the jobs require 1 to 3 years of experience, and most of you guys are freshers, right? You don't have experience. So these are the questions I know a lot of you have. In this video, we are going to find answers to all of these questions, right? If we try to understand why these questions are there in the first place, one of the most major reasons is that students are not aware what the companies are looking for when, let's say, they are trying to hire a new engineer, right? If, let's say, you find answer to this question, that what are the companies looking for in the first place, I think that you will have answers to all the other questions as well. And don't worry, we are going to discuss that briefly, later on in this video. But for now, let's just get started. Before we get started, one more thing I would like to highlight is that the bootcamp that is going to be there, and the roadmap for the bootcamp that, I'm going to conduct, the bootcamp and the roadmap, both of them would be like heavily dependent on what I'm going to tell you in this video. So if you're interested in bootcamp or the roadmap that I'm going to create for web development specifically, then do make sure to watch this entire video till the very end. Otherwise, the roadmap or the bootcamp, you won't be able to understand the purpose of it, right? One more thing before we get started, do make sure to subscribe to this channel. The reason I'm saying that is that a lot of great content is going to come up pretty soon, right? The roadmap will be out next week, and along with the roadmap, the bootcamp is going to be there, and along with that, I'm also going to create a lot of other videos that are going to help you in shaping up your career. So if you don't subscribe, you're going to miss out on a lot of good content. And if you're, let's say, not sure, still not sure if you want to subscribe or not, then what I suggest is to watch this video till the very end. If you like this video, I don't have to say it again, right? So let's just dive into this video now. Now, if I simply search web development versus DevOps, I will find a lot of answers in the browser, right? All of you telling them the difference between the two, but none of them telling you the main thing, right? So I did tend to find out one particular Reddit link that I found was quite, related to what I'm going to tell you in this video. So let me just quickly share my screen here. Now, if you look at my screen, you can see that this is a Reddit thread, and someone has asked a question regarding DevOps engineer versus web developer, right? So the question is pretty straightforward. I'm not going to get into the details of the question here, but if you look at the second answer, then it says that DevOps requires understanding the integration and deployment process and working with a lot more services and tools all at once than a typical web developer does. Right. And this is true, right? I mean, there are so many tools in DevOps, so many tools, Kubernetes, and, so many tools to manage different things, to monitor your application and things like that. So there are a lot of tools as compared to web development when it comes to DevOps. And it also says that you also need to have a pretty good understanding about what's going on with the application in question and its tech stack, right? So you need to have a good understanding of the tech stack as well when you're talking about DevOps. It also says that think of it as a mix between a sysadmin and a full stack developer, right? He also says that I think it's becoming less common to have someone that's just DevOps on a team, because if you can do the DevOps, you should be capable of doing the dev of the application, right? So I know that this answer is a little bit confusing, and he's also, like, in the conclusion of his answer, he's also said that learn them both, start with the web dev and introduce DevOps concepts as you feel comfortable. It will make you more valuable in the longer run, right? So I mean, it is sort of a straightforward answer, but it still might tend to confuse you, right? So I changed my Google search a little bit and searched about full stack versus DevOps engineer, and I found another link on Quora which says something along similar lines. So here, if you look at the question in my screen, it says that which one should I learn, DevOps or full stack, right? So if you look at the first answer that this question has, um, The first answer says, and this is a very good answer, right? It says that neither is very well defined, but where I work in London, the demand for DevOps is huge and the pay scales are skyrocketing. Good thing, right? That's why we all want to get into DevOps. But he also says that I'm earning twice what I was 3 years ago, and I have no idea when the wage inflation will stop. So this is something he's talking about his income and things like that. But then he says that besides the financial incentive, DevOps is full stack, right? We'll get into it in a bit more detail, but let's just complete reading this answer first. A developer who moves into DevOps and succeeds should have no problem landing a choice developer job if they choose to move back to full-time development. Here, what he's trying to say is that if, let's say, you're a DevOps engineer and a good DevOps engineer, then you should have no problem in moving back to a full stack developer role, right? Because I mean there's a development cycle and we'll get into that later. I'm just trying to like talk sense, right? So this is what he says. And next to it he also says that agile teams are desperate for the depth and breadth of skills, right? So this is one of the main points that we are going to discuss. But before we get into it, and I mean after that he's told about some of the things that DevOps engineers should understand, right? But all of it comes after they have some certain knowledge about development, right? There is a specific engineering role. It is not much mainstream as of now, but highly in demand when it comes to it. And this engineering role is known as a full stack DevOps engineer, right? A full stack DevOps engineer. So here in the beginning of his answer, he has said that besides the financial incentives, DevOps is full stack, right? So there is a separate engineer, an engineering role which is known as full stack DevOps, right? I searched about it as well, right? I searched about it and I found this answer where it simply, the question is that does full stack DevOps exist? Right. If you look at the first answer, it says that yes, actually, my position title in our company is DevOps engineer, but I'm also working as a full stack engineer in our company, and I'm proud that I'm self-taught at both since I graduated as civil engineer. Right. So, a lot of you guys have questions regarding things like, in which year can I start earning, and can I get a job without a degree? See, if a person without a degree, without an IT degree, or without a degree at all, myself, can get a job, then it doesn't matter what year you are in, right? And secondly, if you're someone without a degree, this is a very classic example for you. You don't believe me that you'd get a job without a degree. Look at other people, right? He has a civil engineer's degree and he's still in IT, completely self-taught developer who is a DevOps engineer in the company, but has also, like, also has to do some full stack work. So full stack DevOps role are still there, and this might be confusing again, right? I mean, the guy is a DevOps engineer, but mean he's also doing full stack. So what is he doing in the company, right? Or why is he doing full stack when he's a DevOps engineer? So to answer this, right, if I go back to the previous answer, in the last line of like majority of his answer, he says that agile teams are desperate for the depth and breadth of skills, right? So this leads us to two different questions. First question is, what are agile teams? I'm sure most of you guys are not aware what agile teams are. And the second question is, what does he mean by the depth and the breadth of skills, right? So let's take it one step at a time, as I usually say, and let's first try to understand what agile teams mean. Right. So I searched up for a blog, and this is a very good blog. And by the way, don't worry about all the links that I'm showing you. All of those would be mentioned in the description below. So you can anytime go back to those links and check out what the complete answer were and what other people answered in those similar things and things like that. I feel that most of the answers are misleading, or most of the answers are incomplete, or they don't give you the context of what you are actually trying to search for versus what the answer is answering, right? So you might be searching for DevOps versus WebDev, but no one is going to talk in depth about what these two things are. So I'll share all the links in the description below. You can anytime refer back to any of these and try to read the entire thing if you want to. But this is a very good blog on agile teams, what they mean. And if I scroll down a little bit to this section, all of the other things were just saying the same thing again and again. So this is like the main stuff that I'm talking about this section. And if I talk about this section, so agile teams span functions and are composed of 5 to 11 members from across the organization who are dedicated to their teams full time, right? So agile teams are usually small in number. They usually contain just 5 to 10 people, right? And the reason for their small number is that you know it just reduces the delays that are happening, because when you work in a company, a lot of things depend on someone. So the larger the team size is, the more delays are tend to happen, the more mistakes are tend to happen, and you know no one takes ownership of their work. This is what usually happens. If let's say some bug came into the code, it would just keep passing on to the other guy. Like, I gave this code to him, he reviewed the PR, and that guy approved, and things like that. It just keeps going into circles. So agile teams are like the best teams considered when it comes to productivity, and that's why the team size is pretty less, right? And it also says that each agile team has all the skills necessary to develop increments of value in a short time box, right? So leave all the technical jargon. It just means that agile teams contains all the skills necessary to create an application and deploy it, right? So if we let's say look at the 4 points that are mentioned here. The first point is to define the application, right? So defining the application is one thing. Independently elaborating in the design features and stories to accomplish their mission, right? Whatever you're trying to build, there should be shorter step on how to achieve it, right? So that is generally the defining part of the application. Then comes the building part, right? Whatever development that is happening to build that application. And third comes the testing part. Testing your application if it is working fine or not in all the use case that could possibly come up, right? And then comes the deployment part, the DevOps part of the application, right? So these are the four general steps of how an application is planned in the initial phase till the time it is deployed for the users to use. This is like the actual development cycle that happens for each and every application that is out there. And if you look at the image that they have shared below, it says that team 1 has some people who are defining the application. They have some people who are building the application. They have some people who are testing the application, and they have some people who are deploying the application, right? So these agile teams generally consist people who are specialized in one field or the other out of these four things, and they are like a complete package. They can start an application from the planning phase right till the deployment of it, right? And they work in a very fast manner. I mean, whatever application you give to them, it usually meets all the deadlines. It could be that an application is needed in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, things like that. And these team it's given to these teams, and these teams make sure to deliver it in time, right? And that's why the team sizes are small. And companies usually prefer to have 3 4 different teams, agile teams, rather than having just one big team of 40 50 people. They would instead have 4 teams of 10 people each, right? Because that's how productivity increases. They can work on 4 different things at the same time, right? So that is generally what agile team means. Now agile teams are pretty common these days, both for big companies as well as startups, right? And if you're someone who can be a part of an agile team, then it opens up a lot of options for you, right? So let's try to understand these 4 points that we just saw: the define, the build, the test, and the deploy part of an agile team. Again, I am currently writing on my screen. And if we talk about agile teams per se, then we know that the team size is usually 5 to 10 people. right? And they generally have four steps, right? So first is defining the application, right? Second is to build the application. Third is to test the application, and fourth is to deploy the application, right? These are the four steps that consist of the entire development cycle of an application, right from planning till the deployment, right? So now if we look at what types of developers or what kind of people or roles it comes into all these categories. So when it comes to defining the application, it is generally either product or project managers, right? When it comes to building the application, now building the application could consist of front end engineers, they could consist of backend engineers, or they could have a full stack engineer, someone who can write both the front end as well as the back end, right? And they might also need a database administrator for DBMS, right? And now if we come to testing of the application, so these are generally QA engineers. QA is quality assessment. So these are generally QA engineers who test the application. And when it comes to the deployment of the application, this is DevOps, right? The DevOps engineers. This is the role of the DevOps engineers, right? So this is how it usually goes. Now, let's say that I am an interviewer, right? And I want to hire a full stack engineer, right? For the building part of my application, I want to hire a full stack engineer, right? And let's say for that I have received two applications, right? One is person A and the other one is person B, right? So person A says that he is a full stack engineer. He's a full stack engineer, right? Person A says that he's a full stack engineer. Now person B says that he's a full stack engineer too, but he also has knowledge of DevOps. He can also perform DevOps, right? So now let me ask you something. If you were the interviewer in this scenario, you want to hire one person for the team, for your agile team, right? And you have two candidates. One of them is a full stack engineer, the other one is a full stack engineer, but also has knowledge of DevOps. Which one are you going to hire out of these two? In most of the cases, the second one, right? You would hire the second one, right? And if let's say I now have a third, candidate, and he says that I am again a full stack engineer. He says that I can do the DBMS, I can handle the DBMS too, and he also know DevOps. Automatically, in majority of the cases, anyone is going to hire this third candidate, right? The C, right? So companies, since most of the companies or most of the startups in today's time are having agile teams, they are looking for people who are all rounders, right? Who can contribute in maximum ways possible into the team, right? This is the major focus when all the interviewers, any interviewer or anyone is doing any sort of hiring. This is the focus when they try to hire engineers, right? And even there are different reasons for that as well, so we'll come to those reasons later. But first let's talk about this, right? So Now, when we say that, you know, someone knows full stack engineering and they can handle database management and they can also do DevOps, then what kind of engineer is this? Right? I mean, most of the students, they usually either go with front end or they even, go with backend, and some of them know both front end and backend. They are considered a full stack engineer. Some of the students know DevOps, some of them know database management. How can one person know so many things at once? And even if they do, then you know what type of job do they fall into? Why is this guy doing a full stack engineering job when he also knows DBMS or DevOps? Why not other things, right? So this is one of the questions that might trouble you, and that's when a T-shaped developer comes into picture, right? So let's try to understand what a T-shaped developer is. Now let's refer back to the answer that we saw on Quora, where he says that agile teams are desperate for that depth and breadth of skills. We understand now that what agile teams mean, but what about this new thing, the depth and breadth of skills? So that's where the T-shaped developer comes into picture, and there is a very good blog about a T-shaped developer, right? So if you look at my screen right now, and you'll find this blog in the description below, so don't worry about that. But if you look at my screen right now, you would see that um, they have drawn a diagram which looks like a T shape, right? The alphabet T, and the horizontal line of it, right? It says that breadth of cross discipline competence, right? And the vertical line says the depth of discipline expertise, right? And this is a very good article, so let's try to read this, right? So what is a T-shaped developer? The first question. So it says that full stack, front end, back end, specialist, jack of all trades. You have heard them, almost every day. But what is a T-shaped developer? So if you scroll down a little bit, you will see that it says that traditionally organizations favored I-shaped developers, a sort of specialist that has honed a deep and pretty specific area of expertise, right? So if you look at the diagram on my screen, you would see that you know there are analysts, that write executable documents and requirements for engineering, and write user manuals and things like that. There are programmers who write unit test of code, and maybe write production code, design system architecture, and database and things like that. There are testing engineers, the QA engineers, who write automated test and functional testing, and they perform the entire testing, create a plan for testing. There are web designers, web developers, some of them are good with designing the UI UX as well, and they know JavaScript, HTML, CSS, less bootstrap, tailwind, things like that. And they can design certain things. If you're a web developer, you can create front end, you can create back end. If you're a system engineer, it could be DevOps, or you could be doing some shell scripting with Python, Bash, Perl, Go. You could be a system administrator or things like that. So there are a lot of things that different roles require you to do. But if you, let's say, fall into one role, then you should know all the things inside that. And if, let's say, someone is a testing engineer, according to this example, then they know all the things that they have to do, the writing the automation test and performing functional tests, creating the entire plan of how the testing is going to happen for the application. So since they know all of these things, right, they are considered an I-shaped developer, right? And they've again mentioned a few more things on I-shaped developers. Those developers called I-shaped developers, while experts in their area of knowledge and very productive, had a problem. Anything outside their track was a no man's land, right? So if, let's say, you talk about a test engineer in this example, then a testing engineer is very productive when it comes to testing an application, performing the automating the testing and performing functional tests and things like that. But if, let's say, you pick an testing engineer and ask them ki, I want this application deployed, can you help in that? It's a no man's land for them. I mean, they cannot do it because they don't know anything apart from testing, right? The traditional engineers. And you know a backend developer doesn't understand how to do UI UX properly. A front end developer could not solve a deployment problem. So these are some of the problems that you as students might be able to relate. If you're someone who is pursuing front end engineering, can you deploy an application? Pretty difficult, right? Most probably you won't be able to do it by yourself. And if you're a backend engineer and you haven't even touched front end, not even once, can you build a static website? You can't, right? Because it's a no man's land for you. You have never tested your hands in those fields, and it is very difficult for you to even consider doing that sort of thing in a limited amount of time. If you, let's say, have a couple of months, it's not that big of a job. But if you need to do it in a limited amount of time, it's difficult, right? Because it's not your field, it's not your domain, right? So every developer had a pretty strict skill set, as they've said. And then organizations notice this, well, like this entire thing, that every developer is having a very strict skill set, and solved it with the T-shaped developer model. So what is a T-shaped developer? A T-shaped developer is something that you're seeing in front of your screen, a very broad spectrum of knowledge and a deep knowledge in one field, right? So if, let's say, I'm a full stack engineer by default, by profession, I have a very good understanding, a very deep understanding of how to build front end. I have a very deep understanding of how to build back end. But I'm not limited to that. I can plan the entire project, I can do the project management part, right? I can obviously build it, and I can handle the database management, database administrator part as well. I can integrate the database with my application, use it quite proficiently. If it's a SQL database, I can perform all the one to many and one to one and many to many relations that my models might require. And I can perform the testing of my application. I can write all the unit functional integration tests. Might not be as good as a testing engineer, a QA engineer. I might not be as good as them, but I can still do it, right? And I also know DevOps, right? So the depth of my knowledge comes in the full stack part, the front end and the back end. But the breadth of my knowledge, it's not just limited to full stack, but I can also do the project management part. I can also do the testing of the application. I can also do the deployment of the application, and I can manage the databases as well. So now, when I've told you about agile teams, what they are in nature and how do they work, and when I talk about my skill sets now, do you think that any agile team would not want to have me in their team if I, let's say, apply to their job? Just think about it. They would want me, right? They would want me because I can do a lot of things. And they say it here as well, that besides having a defined area of expertise that goes deep into their field, they have a broad knowledge in other areas of expertise as well, right? In this case, a tester knows everything he has to know to perform the job, but also understands the UX design, can create unit tests, can perform basic DevOps operation, etc., right? Uh, but why employers want a T-shaped developer, you may ask, right? So let's look at the pros of why a T-shaped developer is so in demand in the industry, and specifically for agile teams, right? So the first advantage is that more rounded developer, right? So T-shaped developers are have a specialty, normally front end, back end, DevOps, or even a technology stack such as MERN, Mean, MEV, etc. But they also are comfortable doing other jobs outside their scope, right? So this is one advantage that companies see, because see, I mean, at the end of the day, companies are paying you some money, right? And it's human tendency that we want to pay less and get more, right? It's a human tendency. So even companies are looking for it, right? They just don't want someone who they hired for back end development to just do backend. If the time comes, they should also be capable enough to handle DevOps or maybe perform some test cases and things like that, because that's how companies are fetching the maximum value out of you. And that is there. And again, they can help everywhere. A T-shaped developer can contribute to every part of a project. You can have a small team, agile teams, right? That each member have more responsibility and they can cover a wide range of skills, right? So less people and a lot of skills that they are covering just in that small team, and those are the best teams, right? So understands the other developer, right? So as they have a broader skill set, they know the basics of each area and can interact better with other devs, right? They know how to ask what they want, understand the difficulty of their task, and know what to expect from them. So communication happens at a very good pace when you are a T-shaped developer. You can easily communicate with other developers because you're not completely alienated to what the other developer is doing. You know what you need out of them. You know the right questions that you need to ask just because you have context about what that other developer does all day, right? In the project, you know what he's contributing, right? So just because you have idea to that, it becomes pretty easy to have that communication between devs from different fields in the same team, right? So that is there. You're open minded. A developer that doesn't fear to learn anything new is a valuable asset to any employer, right? So since you are a T-shaped developer, you were not just limited to full stack development, but took a step forward to learn the DevOps part, to learn the testing part, to learn the database part, to actually be able to manage a project and bring it to life from the planning phase till the deployment phase. Since you know all these things, the employer by default knows that this is the guy that I can give any task to him and he's gonna do it. He is definitely not afraid to learn new things because he has already learned so much, right? So that is there. By default, it brings a very good image in front of employers. They look at you from a different perspective and they respect you for it, right? And that is there. And again, can cover for other developers. So what happens if the backend developer takes a week of vacation or is sick? Should the project stop until he comes again, right? A team of T-shaped developers can work where the backend developer should be, right? So a T-shaped developer can fill in the shoes of other people's as well. And this is something that companies look for when they are hiring someone, that can this person fill in for other people as well in the team, and can other people fill in for this guy? Other people are hired because they can fill for you, but can you fill for them? That is the question, right? And one more thing that is not mentioned here is that it is cost effective, because if let's say you are going to hire, creating a team, then instead of hiring one person for project management, one person for backend, one person for front end, and one person for database, and one person for testing, and one person for DevOps, instead of having these uh, having these seven different people, you can just have two, three people who fill in for all these skills. It is cost effective, right? Because if let's say these seven developers are going to charge the company 1 lakh each, then on the other hand, the three developers that you're hiring might be working at a salary of 1.5 lakhs or 2 lakhs, right? Which equates to about 5-6 lakhs in total, right? It is cost efficient for the company. They are saving a lot of money on that because you can do multiple things. And it is not mentioned here, but this is also one advantage for the companies that is there. They don't they can have multiple skills for less money. It's like a combo pack, right? A combo pack where you're getting some chips and chocolates and things like that for less money. Like if you would have purchased it individually, then it would have costed you maybe 500 bucks, but since it is a combo, it is costing you 350, right? So that's how it works with being a T-shaped developer. So I-shaped developer that was discussed in this article were traditional engineers who are no more in demand in the industry, and most of the companies are wanting to work with T-shaped developers because of these pros that I've just showed you. And I hope you have got a fair understanding of what a T-shaped developer is, right? With someone who has a depth in one field and a breadth, like a good knowledge in all the other things, right? Those are the T-shaped developers. And yeah, I mean, before I move forward by again addressing those questions that I asked in the beginning of this question, I would just like to quickly show you one article, one job description, one job description. This job description comes from Disney Plus, right? So Disney careers, they have a lot of jobs posted here, and you could look into them if you want to. But I'll quickly show you this one job that there are plenty of jobs. I mean, since all the companies are looking to hire are building agile teams and are looking to hire T-shaped developers, then I mean, a lot of companies are doing this, but just for your reference, I'm going to show you one job description, Disney Careers, right? If you look at my screen, if I scroll down below, I can see that, yeah, so here I can see that if you look at the responsibilities, then in the responsibility section only, it says that your responsibility is to design, to develop, to test, to deploy, maintain, and improve software, right? And this is for a software engineer one, SDE one, right? So for a role of SD1 in a company like Disney Plus, Hotstar, might not be Hotstar, I mean, it goes together, but for a company like Disney Plus, for a role of SDE1, the responsibilities that they are asking you contains design, develop, test, deploy, maintain, and improve, right? So six different things, right? And let's remove maintain and improve out of it. The design or the planning comes into the management part of the product. They might also be asking you for UI/UX. I'm not sure because I haven't applied to it. um, they are asking you to develop, so you need to be a full stack engineer who can handle database as well, right? You need to be able to test your applications and you need to be able to deploy them. If let's say you are a DevOps engineer, are you like even capable of applying to this job because you only know DevOps, right? Because companies don't need it anymore. They are not just looking for DevOps. And this is not applicable in all the cases. If let's say you are damn good with DevOps or if you are damn good with web development, then again companies are going to hire you. But this opens up a lot of opportunities for you because all the big companies are switching to hiring T-shaped developers. All the startups are hiring T-shaped developers because of all the pros that I showed to you in the previous article. And if you know read it further, then it says that participate in the full life cycle of the application development, from requirement gathering and designing to building, testing, and maintaining our software. Agile team, they're hiring for an agile team, right? And agile teams require T-shaped developers, right? So that is there. It's not just about web dev or DevOps, both, right? And work closely with stakeholders to deliver the same crap. And again, they say that a degree or practical experience, equivalent practical experience is important. So you don't need a degree for this, right? And it says that a minimum 1 year of experience, and we'll come to this, right? We'll come to this, but it says that a minimum 1 year of experience is required. And you might be thinking that, oh, I'm a fresher, how am I going to apply to this job? But we'll come to that, right? And then again, experience in programming with any one of the language, Python, JavaScript, Java, C, C++, whatever, right? So that is there. And yeah, I mean, so this is all about the job application. And so now let's talk about the three questions that we asked in the beginning of this video. So the first question was, should I do web development or DevOps? To become a T-shaped developer, you need to do both, right? You can choose any one of them to build the depth in it. If you want to go with web development, you can, you know, get really strong with web development, but you should also have knowledge of DevOps, along with some other things, maybe testing, maybe database, anything like that. But you need to become, your aim should be to become a T-shaped developer, right? And that is there. If you want to become DevOps engineer, then again your DevOps, the depth of your knowledge should majorly focus on the DevOps part, but you should also be capable of building the front end and the back end of an application, or maybe test the application, perform some database operations or things like that. So that is the answer of should I choose web development or DevOps. And again, just to define it for you, so T-shaped developers in simple terms are the jack of all trades but the master of one, right? So the master of one that they are, it is the vertical line of the T, and the jack of all trades that they are, the all the trades that are there, is the horizontal line. So this constitutes a T-shaped developer, right? So that is there. Now again, if you ask the second question, the skills I need to score a high paying remote job, again, I mean, you need to have in-depth knowledge in any one of the domains, but you should also have some good exposure in other domains as well. You should be able to perform them, not at an expert level, but at a basic level, right? Now comes the third question. Would companies hire me if I'm a fresher? Even the example that I just showed you, they required 1 year of experience. So how am I going to get hired? So for that, the first thing that I would like to say is that anything that you build for your portfolio, any application that you built, any hackathons that you might have participated in, any student programs that you might have participated in, or anything whatsoever, whatever you have done counts as experience, right? You can definitely show that as an experience, because you know you have built that from scratch, right? Or you have actually had some sort of experience while maybe being a part of a hackathon or some student program where you got to learn from professionals, got trained, received some sort of training. So that should be a part of your resume. It should be counted as an experience because you definitely got to learn something out of it. Even if you're doing an open source contribution, that also counts as an experience. It should be highlighted in your resume when you're applying to these jobs. And it's a very common phrase. A lot of people say that I received an offer that I couldn't reject. But I sometimes ask, like, why not the opposite of it? Like, be the candidate that the interviewers cannot reject, right? Be a T-shaped developer. Interviews cannot reject you. And if you're a T-shaped developer, you are in a better position to negotiate your salary, get a better pay than other developers, because you are bringing more into the table for the team. You are someone who can write, uh, you can who can perform full stack development. You're someone who can handle the database. You're someone who can do the testing of the application. You are someone who can even deploy the application if needed. So you're bringing more into the table. You can ask for a better pay. And when we talk about, when companies said that they need someone with 1 year, 2 year, 3 years of experience, what do they mean by that? Right. So most of the companies that are out there, or most of the teams that are out there, whenever they are hiring, they are willing to pay more money to the person who is experienced. And when they talk about experience, experience is not only just knowing about how this development works, right, from the planning stage till the deployment. It also means that whoever they are going to hire, these companies do not want to waste time in training the new candidate, right? Whoever they are hiring, they don't want to waste any time in training the candidate. They want the candidate to be job ready, right? So as soon as the candidate joins, they need someone who can pick up the pace of their team, who can understand what the project is and start contributing to it as soon as possible. It could be from day one, it could take a week, it could take 2 weeks at max, but not more than that. Companies are looking for someone who can start contributing as fast as soon as possible, right? And when they hire freshers, then when they're hiring freshers, then one of the major roadblocks for any company that is out there is that they have to spend some time in training these fresher, right? And that's why they don't pay enough money to the freshers, because the fresher is not job ready. And they usually just look for someone who has some sort of experience. So if you are a fresher, you can still apply to companies that ask for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years of experience if you're job ready. And I mean it, right? Because in my personal experience, I am someone, I by profession, I mean majorly the depth of my skills that I'm talking about is in full stack development. I have worked with a lot of tech stacks and I know all the ins and outs of full stack development. But I'm not just limited to that. I mean, as a developer, I've also worked as a mobile developer, you wouldn't believe. I've also worked as a DevOps engineer. I've architected the entire softwares. In my one of my previous, startups, I was the chief architect of the product, and that product got acquired for $1 million, right? From a US based edutech startup. But yeah, I mean, the thing is that I was not limited to just one thing. Right. And wherever I went to, just because I was a T-shaped developer, whatever role I was picking, whatever team I was joining, I was job ready from day one. Right. So, and personally, I have applied to companies. Right. Personally, I have personally applied to companies and as a fresher, and I've applied to these companies that were asking for 2 years, 3 years of experience, and I have cracked those interviews as a fresher. You know, like as someone who doesn't have a degree, and as someone whose highest education qualification is high school, completing the high school, and on top of that being a fresher, I have cracked interviews who were asking for 2 years of experience. In fact, even 3 years of experience. There was a company who was asking for 3 years of experience, and I cracked their interview because they considered my application in the first place. The reason being that the projects that I had in my portfolio were all, depicting the entire software cycle, the application cycle, which, has the planning phase, the development phase, the testing phase, as well as the deployment phase, right? So I had those kinds of applications in my portfolio, and I was a T-shaped developer, so that was also one of the reasons. And yeah, I mean, I was job ready for them. They knew that as soon as I'm going to join the company, I'm ready to work, maybe in a couple of days, if not less than that, right? So I mean, you can also apply to these companies, and if you're still not sure, there is a link to a blog that I'm giving in the description below. Go through that blog, read that entire blog. Even the experts in the industry say the same thing. You can apply to companies that require 1, 2, 3 years of experience. Uh, but the major difference maker here is that whenever you're applying to these companies, you should give them the confidence that you are job ready from day one. And if these companies are having agile teams and they are looking for T-shaped developers, then it's better to become a T-shaped developer, right? If you are a T-shaped developer, then you will be in a better position to get a good salary as a fresher, and also it opens doors for you to apply to companies that require 2 3 years of experience, right? So that's why, I mean, I have been emphasizing in this entire video, telling you what agile teams are, telling you what T-shaped developers are, and I would urge you guys to focus on becoming a T-shaped developer, right? Pick a tech stack. If you want to do web development, if you want to do DevOps, if you want to do mobile development, whatever it is, pick one thing, but not just don't stay limited to only to that, right? Learn the basics of other things as well. uh, just have a complete knowledge of what goes into the entire development process of whatever you are picking up, and become a T-shaped developer. It is going to open a lot of opportunities for you. Netflix is looking for T-shaped developers. They have agile teams. Disney Plus, I've already showed you, they're looking for T-shaped developers. They have agile teams, right? And even companies like Fang, the Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, all these companies, they are looking for uh, Apple, they're looking for T-shaped developers for their agile teams. So become a T-shaped developer, and a lot of opportunities will open up for you. Now, I have personally scored jobs as a fresher that were asking for 2 3 years of experience. If you, let's say, strive to become a T-shaped developer, you can do it too. And not just 2 3 years, maybe more. I mean, who knows, Right. I haven't personally tried it. I never tried to give an interview of someone asking for 5 years of experience when I had none, because that would have been like stupid, I think. But if you have the skills, I mean, anyone can hire you. And if you go through the article that I've shared in the description below about companies, if you can apply to a company without any experience that is asking for experience, if you look at that blog, you will find a similar answer from the experts in the industry. Okay, so with that, now it's time to conclude this video, right? And I just would like to talk a little bit about the bootcamp as well as the roadmap that we are going to have. So, if I talk about the roadmap and the bootcamp per se. Now that I've told you about agile teams and T-shaped developer, the bootcamp and the roadmap, both of them are going to focus on making you a T-shaped developer. I specified in my first video as well. My objective here is not just to teach you the basic front end and the back end of the application. I also want to teach you things like you know how testing is done, how databases are integrated, how you architect a software, what design patterns are there, and things like how to deploy your application. So all of those things are going to be there. There are going to be a lot of projects and assignments in the entire bootcamp, details of which would be revealed later on. Next week I am going to post the video of my roadmap as well. So in that roadmap video for the bootcamp, you would get a very strong understanding of how I am, going to help you in becoming a T-shaped developer through my bootcamp. Yeah, I mean, with all these things that I have just said, my objective here is to make you a T-shaped developer where you understand the entire development process as well as the development journey of an application, right from the you know planning phase till the deployment of the application, all the steps in the middle, right? And this will enable you to contribute anywhere in the team, whatever team you're going to work in after you score a job, whatever agile team you'll be a part of, the new ways of teaming, uh, the new structure of teams that is getting created, right? Whatever it is, my objective is that you should be able to contribute anywhere in the team, because that makes it a lot easier for you to score a job, and it will also make you an invaluable asset for any company that you work into, right? And with that being said, I think that we are going to bring this video to an end now. Just make sure to subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it with your friends. The bootcamp, the roadmap video for the bootcamp is going to be out next week. You guys are going to love the bootcamp, because I mean, all the things that I've specified in this video, told you in this video, are going to be a part of that bootcamp. And I mean, it's just going to blow you away, right? So wait for it. Good things do take time, but I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.